You are listening to the One Day at a Time podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go. Hey friends, my name is Arlena and I'll be your host. If you hear some snoring in the background, that's just Teddy the bulldog. I just don't have the heart to wake him up and kick him out. We have a returning guest today, Andrea Ashley. She's the host of the very popular Adult Child podcast. She gives us an update to what life is like today after going through heartbreak and dealing with parents who are deep into their alcoholism. Andrea really demonstrates what it's like to be strong enough to be vulnerable and stay emotionally sober through very stressful situations. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Andrea. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining me again.
Happy to be here.
Yay. We were just talking, you were on last February 8th, 2023. I thought it was longer. I thought it was longer than that.
It does feel like it was a lot longer than that.
We had a lot of fun though.
Yeah, and then I had Michelle on after that. You introduced me to Michelle Ferris, right? That's your friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing. She's been on a couple times, maybe a few times. That's awesome. But today, I think of you as like the ACA expert because you have the Adult Child podcast. And every time I tell somebody I was on it, they're like, oh, that's so amazing.
Really? That's nice to hear.
Yeah. No, it's a great podcast. Everyone should listen to it. I'm going to leave links in the show notes to your first episode and a link to your podcast, which I was just on. It was super fun.
Yeah, I got a good feedback. It was good. In some of our groups, some things came to the surface for some people from listening to the episode. So,
oh, like what?
Like one girl in particular was just talking about how her dad, I guess her dad was kind of the more abusive parent, but she was saying that now she feels like he's the healthiest in her family now because of the impact of like the program and 12 steps, but that like all of that was like court mandated. And she was saying that like even just from him being like forced to go into the rooms, and I don't even know if he ever had a sponsor or like actually worked the steps, but she was just saying that like it's amazing how just, being forced to sit in those rooms and have to listen to some of the literature and hear other people share how even just something as, as simple as that has impacted her dad somewhat in some ways. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's a trip. My mom actually dated somebody that was sober when I was 14.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Did I? Okay. So before she met him, she was pretty angry. She had some anger issues. Not to disparage her, but these are facts. And then afterwards, she like totally changed. Like he gave her this phrase, "Not my job." And she had like a brother that was really problematic, and she was like always trying to control him or fix him or blah, blah, blah. And after that, he would pull his shenanigans on her and she'd be like, you know what? It's not my job. She just like she was able to let go of a bunch of stuff and she was less angry because of it.
I can't remember what the story was, but I had somebody on my podcast and it was like a similar phrase, but there was a story with it, but it was not my chicken. But I don't remember what the story was, but like everyone just remembers not my chicken, not my chicken.
No, I've heard not my monkey, not my circus.
Yeah, not my
not
chicken.
My circus, not my monkeys. Yeah, it's funny. The funny little things that we come up with to recognize really that some things are just none of our business.
Yes, not our business, not our responsibility.
Not our responsibility. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what's been going on with you. So you're the ACA queen.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't consider myself the ACA queen. Yeah, this stuff is like, I heard this woman posted, let me see if I can find it. Um, I'll tell you what let it off. So I can tell a good bit about it. About just kind of like what I've been going through over the past 18 months. Um, so about it was April of last year. And I met this guy that I started dating, and it was like I had never felt like so seen by
Mm.
uh a prospective romantic suitor. Like I just felt really seen and in a way that I just hadn't experienced before. And yeah, he was really, really, really wonderful. But he was going through divorce and he was not far enough along in the process, you know? And from talking to some dudes who had gone through divorces, I'm just like, this is not gonna this isn't gonna go well if we just keep going from here, And so basically I cut it off with him, like with the hope that like once you're further along in the process, like let's reconnect.
Mm.
And that was so huge for me because like in the past, I settled for like, I stayed with like moldy crumbs, and this was like me actually walking away from quality crumbs, but still crumbs. But it was a big deal for me to like be making this decision. And, it brought some stuff up for me. It was not as extreme as it was in the past, or rather it was more that I had it's just more awareness and more healing. Like when I would go into like an emotional flashback, just having the awareness of what I'm feeling right now is a feeling from the past. The feeling like I'm going to die, like this isn't real, and to actually be able to just sit with myself, connect with my inner child. Um it was really powerful. It was really powerful to and I think we should talk about what an emotional flashback is in case somebody's listening right now and they don't know what that is, because I experienced them for years and years and years and years and years and just thought I was absolutely crazy. And then finally learned that like this is a thing and it's called an emotional flashback. And so it's like one of the hallmark symptoms of complex PTSD. So when we experience trauma as a child, and when we experience trauma at any age, what happens in the moment is, the prefrontal cortex, which is the more, rational part of our brain, that part shuts down. And then the amygdala, which is the emotional part of our brain, that part revs up. And so you're acting purely based off, emotion. And so what happens when we're kids is that after the moment has passed, like when you're an adult, after that happens, hopefully you have somebody that can help you like make sense of what happened, because part of it is that the amygdala, the emotional part that's revved up, that's the part of the brain that is taking in all of like the sensory information, and then the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that then puts that all together and puts it in a cohesive memory. And so when you're a kid and you don't have somebody there to help you make sense of it all, that never happens. Like that memory never gets formed. But all of those pieces of the memory are floating around there in your brain. And so that's why then later on in adulthood, when you have something that triggers those experiences. So for me, it was um, the first time that I ever remember feeling this feeling like I was going to die was when I woke up one night in the middle of the night and I felt like I was going to die if I couldn't sleep in my mom's bed. Right. So that was like this separation anxiety. And so whenever I would have my abandonment wound triggered in a relationship later on in adulthood, whether it was, a guy broke up with me or if a guy didn't text me back for 10 minutes, like I would go into that feeling. And so that's going into an emotional flashback. But since we don't have the clear, cohesive memory, all we're doing is re-experiencing the emotions, right? So, like, if you think about a typical PTSD flashback, there's usually a visual component to it. you know? And so what happens for us is that when we experience this, because we're only experiencing the emotions, we really think that it has to do with the present circumstance at hand.
Yeah.
And so, that it seems completely out of proportion, right? It seems completely out of proportion. And so that was, I'm sure I shared that story on the first time that I was on your podcast, was when I finally had the realization of that. Well, that's what was going on, was when a guy I had dated for less than 30 days ghosts me. And I feel like my husband of 30 years had just tragically died in a plane crash. And the aha was, one, there's no way that the way that I'm feeling right now could actually be about this person. And two was, wow, this is a feeling that I felt often as a child. And while I had experienced that feeling so many times in prior relationships, that was the first time that I was able to connect it to my childhood. So whenever you have a feeling, whenever you get like emotionally flooded, and for me, it can come up as anxiety mostly, or feeling like I'm going to die. For some people, it could be anger. But anytime that you have a reaction to something that is like completely out of proportion to what you're dealing with, like that's a pretty good sign that something from your past is getting triggered. Um, so to be able to have those, to be able to experience the emotional flashbacks and be able to know in the moment that that's what I'm experiencing, it doesn't necessarily make the feeling go away right away, but it does help. Um, but so yeah, and so I handled it. It was just such a new experience for me, right? It was like, wow, I'm really making, good choices here. But I did see that there still was some stuff that was coming up that still needed to be worked on. Like I noticed that while I had done a lot of improvement, there still was a little part of me that still felt like a relationship is still my ticket to happiness, or that like I can't have a fulfilling life unless I end up in a relationship. And I noticed that there was still some of those feelings there. So I'd had this woman on my podcast as a guest. And she did this work. I don't know if it was like RTT or RRT or whatever, but it's some sort of rapid, there's a couple different ones, but it's rapid, whatever. And so I decided, I'm like, why don't we try this out? Like, why don't we try this out? But like, even though I could see in the moment that I was handling the situation a lot better than I had in the past, I still wasn't yet like grounded yet. Like I still was kind of in the trauma, like I hadn't fully leveled out yet. And so I go in and like I just decide to do this program with her right away. And so it's like a week after kind of this all happened with him. And we do kind of like the meat and potatoes of this, RRT thing or whatever it is. And it's kind of like a hypnosis type thing.
Is it accelerated release therapy?
Yes. It's
Yeah.
like that. It's like rapid transformational. There's like a couple different ones, and I don't remember which one she is, but it's like they're all kind of the same. And it's
Okay.
supposed to be like, it's like really fast. Like in a month, you like work through this shit, right? And so I decide to do this with her. And so the way that it works is like, it was like the second or third session, but it really was like a week and a half after I had like cut it off with this guy. Like I had not leveled out yet. And we do this like the hypnosis portion of it, which is supposed to be kind of like the main part of it. And the fact of the matter is like that this woman was like not trained enough to be able to understand that, like, and I should have known too, because I hadn't talked to my therapist, my main therapist, and had I, she would have told me, whoa, like let's wait until you calm down a bit. Because what ended up happening was like I ended up like getting really, really, really triggered and like spun out.
Oh,
Like it
no.
brought up a lot of stuff for me, and it was like not done in a healthy way.
So you were not able to process to resolution?
No, it really triggered me. Like it really, really triggered me. Like there was no sort of I remember when we finished that session and it was supposed to like all make sense at the end, and it was like we weren't there. We weren't there. And then the next part of it was supposed to be where then for the next 13 days, I was supposed to listen to this. It was almost like it was kind of like affirmation-y type thing. It was like this recording that she had made that I was supposed to listen to, at least once a day. And anytime I would listen to it, it was like sending me into a trauma response. And because, and again, this is part of it is like, I should have talked to my regular therapist, and also this woman just like not probably, maybe not having enough training. 80% of what was in the recording was about, uh, like self-love and me taking care of myself. But there was like 20% of it was like about like, finding a healthy relationship. And for where I was at that point in time, like, and based off my history, like none of that needed to be in there, like none of that really needed to be touched upon. And so I remember telling her, I'm like, I really think that this is, setting me into a trauma response. She goes, no, it's just your subconscious resisting.
She said no.
Yeah, she said that. Yeah.
So I'm sorry that happened to you. That sounds a little
Yeah, and so I was like really I was really raw and felt really crazy. And it was and so then it was like Memorial weekend, and I was gonna go down to was going down to St. Pete Beach, and I was gonna meet a friend down there. And when I was driving there, that was the first time in, I guess I was 14 years sober then. I'm 16 years now. That was the first time in 14 years that like I really ever thought about picking up a drink.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, it was the first time ever. And I remember driving, I was like, wow, like this is nuts. Like this is nuts. And then I get there and I'm just like trying to get any sort of a fix. Like I would like, hi Tucker. I went on like a dating app. I was like on a dating app. I was like just like trying to find somebody. I talked to this guy. He was awful. So then of course that just made me feel worse. And I meet my friend there, and then we like end up going out to this there's like a really cool disco bar, which I'll have to go back to and like actually experience it because it was really cool. I think it was called my cat is going crazy. I think it's called Goodnight John Boy. I think they have them, like a few of them all over the country, but it's like a really sweet disco club. And I'm not somebody like I go out and do that stuff all the time. Like I'm not I that's it's never been a trigger for me, and I can be around alcohol. Like it's never an issue. It's clearly a sign of like how much that, whatever got dug up. And so then I'm like in there for like 10 minutes or so, and her other friend was there, and her other friend was just kind of weird. And then all of a sudden I had the idea in my head. I'm like, I want to go gambling. I was just like trying to get like, any sort of a fix. And then all of a sudden I kind of like came to and realized what I was doing. And like my friend had gone to the bathroom and her friend was there, and I was like, I'm going to go outside. And I went outside and I called somebody, and like let them know what was going on with me. And while I was outside, then my friend called me and she's like, and I was like, just let me know whatever you do. Like I told her, I'm like, I'm on the phone with so and so. I'm having a hard time right now. And so then she calls me back again and she asks me for like the code for the Airbnb. So I'm on the phone with this guy. He talks me off the ledge. I'm maybe on the phone for him for 20 minutes. I get an Uber back to the Airbnb. So it's been only 30 minutes like since I walked out of the club to where I get back to the Airbnb. And when I walk into the Airbnb, my friend is packing up her shit.
To leave? Why?
And I was like, she goes, I don't know what just happened there, but I'm out of here. And I was like, well, I'll tell you. Like I'm really going through a hard time, and I told her just about like just how I was triggered and how I thought about drinking, and that I was really going through a hard time. And I was crying, and I said, I can't be alone right now. I can't be alone right now. And she left me. She left me. And thank God I had another friend. I called a friend and she answered the phone, and she lived in California, thank God. And she stayed on the phone with me for 4 hours while I drove home.
Oh, you drove home immediately.
Yeah, I couldn't stay there. And you know what? It was fine. Like what what was going on with her, I mean, obviously it was just kind of like bad timing. Her reaction to that, and I know, and I kind of knew in the moment too. It had nothing to do with me. It had to do with stuff that was going on with her, you know? But it was
That was
just
a
really
reaction,
shitty.
a reaction that was disproportionate to the situation.
Clearly. I mean, she had acted like I had disappeared for like 30 days. You know what I mean? Like I hadn't disappeared at all. I walked outside. I was having a hard time. I answered the phone when she called me and then she did that. So, but that really just kind of like set off, like it really was the next. So that was, yeah, end of May of 2023. And, the following, I would say from then until September 11th, when I had to put my cat down, like it's just been like one hit after the next of like my abandonment wound kind of getting triggered, like, stuff with my parents and other friendships, like, like my longest term friendship also kind of out of nowhere, ending our relationship. And I'll tell you a really crazy story about that too. So, when I because of my history, like when I was drinking, I was such a shit show. I was such a just a sloppy mess and just the girl that you don't want to be friends with because I cause scenes, right? And so
Same.
like like I didn't know how to be a friend, and through recovery, I learned how to be a friend. And I learned how to be a really good friend. And so I would say like at a certain point in time, like if a relationship or something didn't work out, like there was a period in my life where like anytime something like that happened, like you obviously are the problem. You obviously are the problem. But I had gotten to a place where like when that stuff happened, like I was able to see like usually it's not me, like yes, I have a part in it. You know what I mean? But it's not because I'm inherently flawed and unfixable and I just suck as a human. Like I had gotten to a place where I just knew that that wasn't the case. But over the course of this past year, it was just like so many things happening. And I just remember saying to a friend or my therapist or something, it's like, it's really hard to not feel like I'm the common denominator here. And so it's right before July 4th of this year. And I was just kind of in a bad space in my head where I was just feeling like I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. And and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to this meeting. There's this women's meeting that I really didn't have any interest in going to, and I hadn't been to it in a long time. But just something was like telling me, you need to just go to this meeting. Just go to this meeting. I just get in the car and I go to this meeting, and and I walk in there, and there was this girl in there who um she she was neighbors and good friends with my closest friend that had like broken up with me like the year before. It was almost a year before, I guess. And she sent me a text and she was like, I've been wanting to see you. Um, she's like, the same person that hurt you did the same thing to me. And I wasn't really sure like what she was talking about, but we ended up talking after the meeting. And basically like that friend had kind of done something similar to her like over the next few months, like had kind of like ended the friendship with her. And some other weird things had happened. But basically what she said to me, she's like, I've been wanting to see you because I've been wanting to tell you that I wanted to tell you that you weren't the problem.
Oh,
And it was just like such a God shot, you know? It was such a God shot. Um, and yeah, and then she, her and I have become close friends. And, she was the one that was like at my apartment, like when that night I had to like put my cat down, you know?
yeah.
So
It's so hard. Yeah, so much loss this year.
yeah, it's been a lot. It's been like a lot of different things, and the story's like a lot crazier than that. And I can't wait to tell it all one day. It's going to be such good content. I'm coming out of it. It's like excellent content. Um, but here's the deal. Like, this is just like how it goes, Like, this is just how it goes. Like, this is how we heal. Like, sometimes we have to almost like go backwards to like revisit wounds in a way in which perhaps we weren't able to before. And as painful as this experience has been, and a a lot of it like wasn't of my own making, but there also was like some not great decision making on my part too in certain respects, but like I was really able to not beat the shit out of myself, because it was like I understood what was going on. Like it was a very weird experience of being so sane yet so insane at the same time, and like not really being clear about how all of this was going to work out, or sometimes like how I was going to get out of certain situations or how things were going to clear out. And I finally feel like over the past couple months, I'm feeling like myself again. I'm starting to feel like myself again. I'm starting to feel like reconnected to the part of me that like knows that like I'm really remarkable. Like there was just like this fire inside of me that I felt when I was kind of, I hit my adult child bottom, and then I was on this like kind of multi-year journey of like trying to figure out like why was I brought here and like what makes me special, and like being able to see that specialness in me, and most particularly about the way in which I can connect with other people, the way in which like my vulnerability and authenticity makes other people feel really just like what makes me me. And I've really felt disconnected from that part for a long time. And it's really been in the past like month or so that like I'm starting to feel that again. And so this is just like how it goes, like this is just like how it goes. Like healing and growth has always been really like has to be really excruciatingly painful for me. But like I just feel like really honored that I don't know, that I was chosen to do this work and this healing, like in such a public way, like to let other people know that it's okay too. Like this stuff's messy and we're all just doing the best that we can. We're all just fucking doing the best that we can. So, yeah, it's a ride. It's quite a ride.
Pardon the interruption. I just wanted to give you a heads up on some free resources I have for you that will help you solve the one problem we all have, regardless of where you are on your sober journey. And that is overcoming negative patterns. We all have that one area that is particularly stubborn. It typically shows up in one of three areas: relationships, fitness, or finance. And here's the really frustrating part. We already know what to do to reach our goals in these areas. But what we end up doing is looking for the next guru who'll give you the next right strategy or tactic. So we get stuck in consuming information when what we really need to do is just take action on the knowledge we already have. I propose that what's really going on is that we have internal resistance, and it's your default mode network. It's your brain's operating system, and that's what's keeping us stuck in these negative repeating patterns. So, I am going to be creating a lot of content, step-by-step videos on how to overcome that resistance. But you'll have to be following me on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Arlena Allen, same for TikTok. And I actually have a brand new Facebook page also under Arlena Allen. And you can also find me on YouTube under the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast. I'll be sharing journaling exercises, meditations, and science-based practices, all aimed at reprogramming your default mode network and overcoming resistance. I'll also leave links to all of this in the show notes at odatchat.com. That's it for now. Back to the show. It is. Yeah, it is messy. And the reason it's messy is because you're in touch with your feelings. You allow your feelings to arise and you have support, which creates safety for the feelings to come up. And what were some of I know you have a therapist. Is your
Well,
therapist?
let me just add the other part too about my parents. Like I am an only child, and when I started doing this adult child work 2018, it's there's a quote. Sorry, I have coffee grounds in my mouth now. There is a quote in a book, and it talks about how like when one person, breaks away from the family system and no longer plays the role that they always played, how the rest of the family, sees that as the problem. Like when one person is finally able to like identify the problem in the family, like they become the problem, right? And I I've really this is how I like to describe my role in my family now. So once I got sober, like both of my parents' alcoholism really picked up. And they're both so sick, you know.
Mm.
Um my mom's like in pretty like late stage alcoholism, and my dad is pretty awful too. And they're so sick. And you know, that was the other thing too, is like while all this was going on, like they have become very, especially my mom. So my mom was the alcoholic growing up, but she was a binge drinker. You know, it wasn't that often. And when she wasn't, she was the best mom ever. Like she was such a good mom. You know, she really was. She was there for everything. And you know, 90% of the time she was a wonderful mom, and she's always been so loving and caring towards me. And as her alcoholism has progressed, like she's not the same person anymore, you know? And she's become like I put my foot down, so it's gotten a little bit better, but you know, she became pretty verbally abusive. Both of them have. And yeah, so there's that part of it too. It's like as time goes on, it's like I lose them like more and more and more. And it really feels like I don't have parents anymore, you know? Um I had an incident with my dad back
Just
in
clarify,
sorry.
still married.
Huh? Yeah, they're married, yeah. And
Okay.
what's really weird too is like they really do love each other.
Is he taking care of her?
Yes and no, yeah. I mean, it's like they both I don't it's the stuff with my mom is so weird. Like I don't sometimes it's like I feel like she's like it's about to end, and like then somehow she just like kind of like pulls it back together, and it's very weird. Like sometimes she has these periods where it just seems like she's just drinking around the clock, and then sometimes it just seems like she somehow just like pulls it back together. It's so weird. It's so weird. But me too, like I have had to really I've put up so many boundaries, and I don't always know what's going on, and I prefer it that way. You know, it wasn't until I was 6 years sober was when I told my dad for the first time, stop calling me anything every time something happens.
Oh.
You know, and then it was a slow kind of walk away, because it was hard for me to not want to know what was going on all the time, because that was always the role I played since I was like 7 years old, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so it would be hard to not like call and ask questions. And now I really just don't have any interest, you know? Um,
That's one of your boundaries is you told your dad not to share too much information.
but he would call, yeah, I mean, he would call me anytime anything would happen with I'm not living out in San Francisco, you know, they're living in Florida. Because that's the way it was since I was a kid. So I would tell him, you know, stop calling me every time something happened. I can't do anything about it, you know?
Right.
Um, and so, um, yeah. And so, you know, my mom's drinking has just, progressed more. And so my parents usually go to Tahoe every summer. And so now I'm back in Florida, you know, so I was living in San Francisco for, almost 10 years. And then now I've been back since it's 2 years now. And so every summer my parents go to Tahoe. Well, this was the first summer that my mom decided not to go. And it really was just because of her drinking, and I think it's just like too much of a hassle to like make the move, you know? And so my dad came, so then my dad's just been like going, and like he goes out there for weeks at a time, and it's just like leaving her, and that just seems really reckless to me. It's like you've chosen to stay married to her. I kind of feel like it's kind of your responsibility in a way. Um but so he came back in June, and we were going out to dinner, just me and him. Well, he informed me the night before that my mom was in the hospital for pancreatitis. And so we go out to dinner, and he's telling me about how he's flying back out to Tahoe 2 days later. He's like, I hope your mom's going to get out of the hospital on Monday, because I'm supposed to go fly back out to Tahoe on Tuesday because so-and-so from Bible study and his son and the guy who owns so-and-so's pizza are coming out to go golfing. It's just like, oh my God. It's just like this insane world that we live in. But so halfway through the dinner, he goes, I want to talk to you about something. And he starts telling me how it really makes him upset that I'm not closer with my mom and that I don't see her more often. And really, all of this stems from he doesn't want to have to feel so guilty for
Right.
leaving her.
Yeah.
And he's going on and then he stays calm. And I get real triggered. And he goes, so what do you have to say about that? And I paused. I really sat there and I thought, because he's used my words against me in the past, or I'll lose it. And I just sat there and I really thought, what do I want to say? What do I want to say? And I just said, you know, you made my mom's alcoholism my responsibility when I was 7, and you're still trying to do it to me today. He would go out of town. Like his work was always, number one. So here I'm an 8-year-old girl, having to take care of my mom when he goes out of town, And he just keeps going on and on about how, and I'll give him this. He didn't lose it. He didn't start yelling at me at some point, which was like actually quite remarkable that he stayed calm the whole time. And and so but he just keeps talking about how he just wants us all to be closer. And he understands that, they have a drinking problem, but he's had to deal with his brother's alcoholism his whole life. And he's just putting it, and I go, you want to know how to have a closer relationship with me? How about you guys both stop drinking? And his response to me was just kept being like, you should just be able to handle it. You should just be able to handle it.
Wow.
And then he goes, it just really makes me sad that you and your mom aren't closer. And I go, and it really makes me sad to see both of my parents die from alcoholism.
Wow.
It was just
Is that how you
such,
left it?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if he was gonna blow up at me a few days later. He didn't. He wouldn't really lose it on me until August. When I was out at their house in Tahoe by myself, and then he ended up coming out. And the thing that my dad does is he tries to bargain with God. So he wants people to believe in Jesus, or he gives all this money away to charity, but tells you about it, And so he's constantly trying to get me to go to church with him. And he's constantly telling me that he got me this or that. So we're and his drinking is bad too. It's bad. He's a daily drinker too. And he's mean. And his memory is he's, I don't know if he's getting dementia or what. And so we're out to lunch, and he starts telling me about this book, this Christian book that he bought me. And I just had enough. And I just went, oh, I got you a book too. It's called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's what people should know too, is that no one's in denial here. We're all aware of what's going on. I mean, alcoholism has been alive and well. Always, no one's denying that's the case. We all know, and for people who didn't hear my first, I was the scapegoat, I got sent to therapy when I was 9. I got sent to treatment when I was 14. And when I acted out, when I started drinking from 12 to 19, my mom stopped drinking. My parents stopped fighting because they had to come together to deal with me, But then it was as soon as I got sober, it's just been this spiral down. And so I said, I got you this book. And actually I got to tell my therapist about it. I hadn't had an opportunity to tell her because now I'm focusing on this IFS one. But the one that I've had since I started this journey in 2018, I had an appointment with her this week and I got to tell her all about this. And I didn't go off on, I kind of went off on him, but I didn't yell. I wasn't mean. I was just very matter of fact, because here's the deal. It's I don't participate in the dysfunction, but I don't also participate in the family denial. So I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room. I'm not going to try to carry the elephant out of the room, but I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room. And I just told him, I said, I'm okay with God. Like I'm good with God. I don't think that you need to be worried about my relationship with God. I was like, how do you think that God feels about the fact that you're an alcoholic? You know that you're an alcoholic. You know that it's negatively impacting your daughter, and you're choosing to do nothing about it. And so we were fine after lunch, but then later that night, he just went off on me via text, but I didn't get triggered at all.
You did.
I didn't get triggered at all. I engaged a little bit, I'll be honest. But it was more like, you're not mad at me, you're mad at yourself, or it was like, you sound like a 6-year-old, but it was I'm never talking to you ever again. I'm cutting you out of the will. I'm never talking to you ever again. And I was able to, in that moment, recognize that he was going into fight response. That's what he does. When I bring up something that he doesn't want to acknowledge about himself, he goes scorched earth on me. And I'll tell you, I didn't get triggered at all. I got a little tiny, I got a little excited, but I wasn't I didn't go into any sort of a trauma response. And so then the next day I get a text from him. I go home the next day. The next day I get a text from him. Please don't ever communicate with me ever again. And then he does this like once or twice a year. This is what happens. Tells me he's never talking to me ever again. He's writing me out of the will. And so then the next day I decided, this is something I had never done before. I decided to send him a video. And I wanted to send him a video because I wanted him to be able to see my face and hear the tone in my voice. And I just said, listen, Dad, I love you. And this is why I said, I love you. Our relationship is important to me. And that's why I'm sending you this video. I said, telling me that you're never talking to me ever again after a 20-minute conversation at lunch is absolutely ridiculous. And I just said, anytime I bring something up that you don't want to look at yourself, you lash out on me. You attack me. And I said, this is the third time this has happened in 20 months. And I said, it's abusive. It's not okay. But I understand that it's not about me, And I just said, listen, if you want to say you overreacted and apologize, then great. Like, we can move on right now. But if you don't, like, that's on you, And I said, I'm not going to keep doing this. And I just said, I love you very much. I said, I hope you maybe get some perspective from somebody else. And the ball's in your court. And I didn't hear anything from him. So that was the beginning of September. And I didn't hear anything from him until like a week and a half ago. I got a text that said, it's time we put this behind us. And so I waited a couple days and I said, Dad, you've had the opportunity to put this behind you since I sent you this video. I said, this isn't how you do it. And then he wrote back and he said, and I'll read and I'll give it to him, He said, let's see here. Dad, where is this? Sorry, I've just been talking constantly. He goes, Andrea, I'm very sorry for what I said. That was obviously terrible, but I have no recollection of it. I just know that I must have been very drunk and I was upset with the way you treated me at lunch. Again, I'm very sorry and I hope you will forgive me. Neither your mom or me are very healthy at this point.
How do you feel about it?
And I said, thank you. I just wanted an apology. And he said, I'm sincerely sorry. So,
okay. Keep it moving.
Yeah. So I'm supposed to have, supposedly we have a reservation for dinner on Thursday at 4. I would say that it's like a 75% chance that they cancel, which is fine. I prefer they do for Thanksgiving. Yeah. But so that's the other aspect of it too, is like, I don't feel like I have a family. And that is all going on at the same time, like I'm just, I've lost my parents in many respects. So that is also has a heavy presence and energy in everything else that I, shared. So sorry, I just went on a really long monologue.
That's okay. No, that's a lot. And I'm sure that, these are the holidays. Everybody is having lots of trauma around family come up. It's not easy to either be around your family, and sometimes if there's a lot of stress, to not be around your family, right? Seems like it's tough either way.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned doing IFS. What is your experience? Excuse me. What has your experience of IFS been like since you've been going through all this?
So I started in June. Um, it is, slowly but surely. I do think that it obviously, hi Cheeto baby. I do think that I do think it's helping because I'm noticing some shifts. Um, you know, I I think that there's some carried shame there. Um, that stems from the women like in my lineage. My mom and my both grandmas, like I feel like they had to stay small in order to be taken care of.
Yeah.
When I don't think they needed to be taken care. Like I think that they could have taken care of themselves, but that's been my big block, and that's been the thing that has really been that is what I realized, where like when I told you that relationship um made me realize that I still had these beliefs that like the only way I can be happy is to be in a relationship. Well, what I realize is that the belief is really that I don't think I can take care of myself. It's not so much that like I think that that's the only way that I can feel happy. It's like this very primitive part of me like feels like I can't take care of myself, so I'm going to die if I don't find somebody. And I've been able to connect to some parts where I really feel like it was this like they felt like they had to stay small in order to stay in these relationships. And then the other thing that was really interesting was that like there was this part of me that was like same part, but it was like you have to stay sick because the only people that will want to take care of you are sick too.
Right. Yes. Someone who needs to take care of somebody sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like if you're healthy, you're not going to attract those types of people,
Yeah.
you know? Like no one healthy is going to want you.
Right. Well, water seeks its own level, right?
Yes.
So,
So it's been helpful. It's slow. It's slow.
mhm.
Um, but I feel like I'm getting there. It wasn't until like a year and a half ago that I finally was able to start crying.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not like I never cried, but like I really couldn't cry that much. And yeah, man, I've cried so much over the past year and a half. So, and that's not to say like I've made a ton of like I've made a ton of growth and healing like prior to this, and but this is just like another season for me. It's like another layer, and it's like these really really deep layers. And what I like to say is like, a lot of what I went through was so subtle, at home, and I just think that I don't know, it's really hard sometimes to fully. It's like heal we have to heal certain things so that we then have the capacity and resilience to like then go to the next level,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of the way that it works. So
Yeah. Yeah. There are definitely seasons where it's challenging and then things get better. I mean, it's just ebb and flow. There's no real, you know, doesn't stay the same forever, but there's always like lessons that come from these challenging times.
I'm sorry, I feel like I look like I have a weird filter on. I don't know why. I look like a fake person. I'm gonna turn this lamp down, whatever.
You're going to make me do some editing, aren't you?
Sorry. Okay. I feel like I just look like I really have a heavy filter on, and I don't. What does it look like if I turn it off? Then you can't see me at all. Whatever. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Your ADHD is kicking today.
I'm sorry, guys. I woke up so tired. I don't know what the fuck's going on with this lamp. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, you look fine.
I know.
It's fine. So tell me what you're doing these days. You have the group.
Yep.
Tell me about that.
I have my community. So we have 4 groups a week. On Monday nights we've been reading have you read Facing Codependence by Pia Melody?
Haven't.
Oh my god. I'm reading that. And then the rest of the groups throughout the week are just I pick like a daily reading. I've actually started to ask people to do the groups for me
Yes.
to get some help, so that's been nice.
Oh, that's really
We also have a childhood sexual abuse group. They meet on Wednesday nights, so that's like a smaller group of them, which I think that there's some like really profound healing occurring within that group. It's not something I don't have experience with that, so I'm not a part of that. And then there's also a divorce and separation group I think that meets on Fridays. So yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, running a community of traumatized people is hard at times. So I'm doing that, and then I just do the 2 podcasts a week, and just trying to think of like what is next, like what I have the kind of like the creativity bug, kind of like I want to create something new. I'd like to create something that doesn't have anything to do with trauma or being an adult child or anything like that. But whatever it is, it's like I crave substance and depth and deep connection and no fluff. So it'll be something like intense regardless, probably.
Yeah. Is it going to be like, are you suspecting it's going to be around some kind of somatic practice or something like that?
No, I think I'd like to just like maybe create like I'd love to create another podcast, but maybe just like like I love telling stories, or like I love deep diving into things. Like I'm just, I'm kind of like I'm an information addict, I'll be honest. Yeah, there's lots of like interesting things out there. So, um, yeah, I just like connecting with people and telling stories. And, I think that my gift or kind of my role is to be like a facilitator of conversations in a way.
Uh,
So I don't know. I mean, I had a million bajillion ideas before I started this. So I don't really hold on to anything too tightly, because there were so many things that I thought were the thing before I decided to do this thing.
right.
So I'm really just trying to give it over to God, and I've just told myself that, for the rest of the year, I'm just going to try to just be,
Yeah.
just be. I think that I've realized that, I've had to lose a lot of things in order to like find myself again.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to be okay with, kind of some loneliness. I would love more in-person, like deep connection. I don't know where I want to live either, but it's like, I just feel like there's a lot of things up in the air, and it's like, I don't need to have them all figured out right now. And so I've told myself that we're not going to stress, or, we're just going to kind of be for the rest of the year, and we'll just see what the universe brings forth. So,
Yeah. There's a lot of power in surrender and allowing things to unfold.
and there's also
Trusting.
just like a lot of weird things in the world too. So,
Yeah. Just trust.
mm-hmm. So this has
Listen,
been great.
it's
Sorry
been
if I
great.
talked the whole fucking time.
Well, they hear from me all the time. They want to hear from you. But listen, it's been great to hang out. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing what's really going on. I think a lot of people can really identify with the, pain of growth and just life is hard. And, you can stay sober through it all. There's help available and community, it's huge. So
Yes, ma'am.
thanks so much for hanging out today.
Thanks for having me.
One last last thing before you go, you can follow the podcast on Instagram for daily inspiration at ODAT Podcast. And if you'd like to get a biweekly email from me with recommendations to books I'm reading, meditations I love, or other recovery podcasts, just sign up for it at odatchat.com. That's ODAAT chat.com. And if you do, I hope you enjoy it.